So hello, everybody. Good evening. We're so glad to get together and talk about reviewing our homeschool year and setting goals for next year, what that looks like. So I thought we would start in prayer, and I saw this very simple prayer to Our Lady that I thought was appropriate for our time. So we'll begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Holy Mary, comfort the miserable, help the faint-hearted, cheer those that weep, pray for the people, be the advocate of the clergy, intercede for all women consecrated to God. May all who celebrate your memory feel the might of your assistance. Amen.
Amen. Spirit, amen.
I just think Our Lady is such a good guide for us as mothers and having conversations about being mothers and how to make all those decisions, because she was a mom and she gets some of it. She was kind of perfect too, so maybe she doesn't quite get all of it, but I think she does in her way. So what we are going to do tonight is talk about the importance of and the how-to of pausing before you dive into curriculum catalogs and dive into making decisions about next year and really reflect on last year. I think that as moms, we're mostly really, really busy, and our houses are very, very, maybe not loud. Some of them are loud, but very,
It's
very
loud.
very, very all-encompassing. Like it's very hard to be alone with our thoughts because there's always something we need to be doing. And it's very hard to have those big, deep thoughts and look at the big picture. So it has been almost 10 years now that a group of moms and myself in Miami got together, and we were going to do this kind of retreat day to help one another plan our homeschool year. And we started talking about what was that going to look like, because there was a core group of us that was kind of lead a bigger group of moms. We started talking about what that was going to look like, and we came up with this realization that we couldn't really start planning or help these mamas start planning unless we did some introspection. And we ended up spending lots of time talking about how to do that and how to help moms do that in a way that would kind of be universal and work for everybody. And what we realized in having those conversations is that if we're going to think about what to do next year in our homeschools, it's a bigger question than what level math does Johnny need to do, or how is Susie with her reading. It encompasses so much of just what our family is doing overall, how our family is doing overall, where are our strengths, where are our weaknesses, what have been our successes this year, what have been our struggles, and where are we heading? What is our spirituality? Because it has to come central. So through these discussions, we went ahead and prayerfully constructed this survey, and I linked to it in the group. It's in the file section. It's titled the Personal Reflection and Self-Evaluation Survey, which is fancy and formal sounding, but it's a way to walk yourself through mentally all these different things I just mentioned, so that you can kind of see, where are we? It's kind of a state of the homeschool, so to speak. And then we found a lot of peace when we started doing this in then picking up the curriculum catalogs and talking to other homeschool moms about, what are you doing for this? And what should I do for this? Because we could do it from the perspective of what are the true needs and goals of my family, my homeschool, for each of my children, and so forth. So it's a little bit about goal setting and being specific about what you want to do next year, but it's a lot about thinking about, where are we, kind of the status. But that's what we developed, and it's not the only way to reflect on your year. It's, there's plenty of ways to just have some time to think about what's going well and what's not going well, or maybe where there are gaps that we've noticed that we would really like to address next year, whether that be character-based, virtue-based, academic-based, social-based. There's, I think it's Sarah McKenzie says she kind of picks a theme for each year. Like, this year we're going hard on math, or this year we're going, and that can be, this year we're going hard on friends. We need better friends, whatever it is, so that you have some priorities and you can make decisions based on those priorities. So before I kind of go into the survey, and I do want to explain some of it to you and kind of give you some examples of the questions and why they're there, I'm curious why a couple of you, not why, how a couple of you guys plan to think of your year. Plan wasn't the right word. I guess, how do you think back about the year? Do you look at your lesson plans? Do you have a tool that you use? Do you spend time doing that? And what helps you to get a big picture mental image of what you want to accomplish next year? And so I'll pick on Leslie because she offered to share her 2 cents.
Sure. So where I live, I'm actually required to keep a periodic log for my school division. And so and it's broken down by month. Now, lots of people do it on like June 1st. But I got in the habit of kind of just filling it out monthly. And it's basically just a sample of things we've done. So we finished a unit study on this, or we went and we did a reading buddy program here. So I kind of do that each month, and I try to keep track as I do it of what we've done. And then I match it up against a big list I made when I first started of all the reasons why I wanted to homeschool, and then all of the goals I wanted my kids to learn. And they're not all academic. Some of it's I wanted my kids to learn handicrafts or how to play the piano, things like that. So each month I just kind of try and take a look, because at the end of the year, I can't remember. Sometimes I forgot like what day garbage day was last week. So I just don't trust my memory. So I find if I do it once a month, it forces me to make sure I get it done. And then it gives me that chance to just say, okay, these are kind of the activities, and it jogs my memory. And then again, I match it up against, am I meeting some of the goals that I wanted? Did we do it well? Yes, maybe we were learning the multiplication tables, but maybe it wasn't really as settled as I want. So I try and just on an ongoing basis. And then I just kind of keep a track next to my big goals. Like, okay, these are things, if I feel like we really met it, then I'll maybe put a tick mark and that child's initial. So that way I'm always evaluating, because I can't rely on my memory long term. And I find that's really helpful for me. So it's as relevant as it can be. Once a month isn't too crazy, but it doesn't allow it to build up. And then I'm like totally lost and I can't remember, did we ever read this book? So
that's great. That's a great way to do that. Do you plan that time each month? Very specifically, I'm going to do it one day a month or a certain date of the month, or do you set aside school time or evening time or your kids?
No, I usually do I do it in the evening time. I try and do it the first Sunday of the month, and then that way I use it to then plan my upcoming month. So then, and I'll write out, okay, so we didn't get to all our copy work lessons. So then that also is my jumping point for then where we go in the next month, because I found previous years I'd be so ambitious and plan all these things, and then we didn't get to any of them, and and then you run into that trap of I'm behind, I'm ahead, so now I just do it really 4 weeks at a time, max. I mean, I always have like an overall arching plan, but yeah, I try to find the first Sunday of the month just helps me set up, or, if it's the first is on a Wednesday, maybe I'll do it on like the Sunday prior. Mm-hmm. So I try and do it the first Sunday before a month begins. So that way it's, get fresh in my head, and it's not like I don't have to reinvent the wheel constantly. And it's just become a habit now that I do it. I did have an alarm on my phone for a while. And that could be handy for someone maybe to start off with. Mm-hmm. And but now it's just kind of become ingrained. So I do it, and then I don't have to think about it that much.
I love that. And then you have all those notes kind of collected so that at the end of the year, when you're picking books or whatever for the next year, you've got that, right?
Oh, sorry, it's breaking up.
Do you have all those notes?
Yeah. And then I do. Yeah, I keep it in one binder. Sorry, my phone's plugged in. If not, I should have grabbed it up earlier. But I just keep it in like a little 3-ring binder. Actually, maybe I can grab part of it. I think I have here. Maybe I can grab it. So it's not fancy. It's a file folder like this.
Yeah.
And it just literally has loose leaf inside. Yeah. So it's real simple. And then what I do is then when I feel something's not working or need to achieve something, I then try and shop my shelves first and say, okay, do I have something that matches already what I'm trying to do? or can I go online and find like a digital copy or some other resource? And then if I really feel like I can't find it, then I'll go and I'll purchase it. I'm happy to do that. But
Sure.
it saves me from getting overwhelmed with resources like, we have to do this, we have to do this, because you don't.
Right.
So.
Right. That's great. I love that you space that out and then it's a regular routine for you. That's really good. Does anybody else have a kind of a method to figuring out what's working and what's not? And see thought bubbles.
I'll just pop in.
Sure.
I'll just pop in. So my kids who are dyslexic tricked me for a number of years because they read really, really well, but they did not spell well. And a few years ago, when I had them assessed at a dyslexia nonprofit, and it all just kind of came together. I up and decided, and we were enrolled with Mother Divine Grace, but I up and decided, as the head of our homeschool, that we were going to focus on the language arts, on the math, and everything else will just happen. You know what I mean? You know how, some people do pick years where they like, we're going to focus on math this year. We're going to focus on whatever this year. We're going to focus on history. We've never done science. Let's focus on science. I just kind of put everything else on the background so we could focus on reading, spelling, grammar, writing, all of the language arts plus math. And then we just kind of loop scheduled all of the other subjects. Religion on Monday, history on Wednesday, science on Thursday, fine arts on Friday, because, that way I know that we're getting something done, but we're still taking that big chunk to focus on what we need to focus on. So I'm, at the end of the year when we're reviewing, I have help. We're enrolled with Mother Divine Grace. We have syllabi. We have quarterly assessments we have to turn in. Once we get to a certain part of the syllabus, I'm like, okay, we're done with that subject for the year. Like, okay, geography's done, and there have been years when I've been like, you know what? You want to finish geography? Let's just finish geography, just kind of finish it, and then when we get to a certain point, pencils down, we're done with that subject, but we're still, because we spend so much time focusing on, English language arts and math, that we're still doing that throughout the summer. Like when your children are dyslexic or they have a particular learning need, you can't take off for 3 months and then expect all of that expect for them to retain all of the hard work that they've done. Right. So the focus is on that, still, keeping in the religion, still keeping in the beautiful things with a loop, that way, we have things that we enjoy. We enjoy history. History's our favorite, but we have skills that we need to build and we need to use every single day, or they just forget. Yeah. And so our end of the year review is kind of simple. We've made it to a certain point of the syllabus and I've turned in whatever like quarterly assessments or whatever assessments I need to turn in. And but then we just keep going with the big subjects. So I guess it's pretty simple, but it did take us a few years to kind of get to that place.
Right. I love how you describe how you identified this need and then you made that your guiding force. You centered everything else around that need of your kids, and that's so key, because I think we can really easily just get caught up in checking off the boxes, getting it all done every day, do all the things, and not really look at, what is going to benefit my kids the best? Because that's one of the benefits of homeschooling is we get to tailor things to our kids' needs.
Right.
We get to give them more in whatever area they need and less in whatever area they really don't.
Right. And that's, I think that's one of the I guess, benefits of Mother of Divine Grace as opposed to the other box school curriculums. You know, they're pretty flexible with us because my children do have these needs. So they're pretty flexible. And I think that's probably why we stuck with them for so long. And they just, I mean, not that we need them, you know, because I would never tell another homeschool mom, like, oh, you totally need to enroll, like, you know, but for me, it keeps me accountable. And we get assigned a personal consultant who knows our family. So throughout the year, we have these consultations. And so at the end of the year, we go through subject by subject, like what worked, what didn't. And I mean, I guess in a way I'm blessed because I don't have a consultant that's like, well, if you had just followed the syllabus exactly, then we wouldn't be having this issue. You know, my consultant's like, just tell me how it, you know, how did it go? You know, what did they learn? What did they have trouble with? You know, things like that. So in that sense, you know, being enrolled in a program has helped me.
Right, because it's like it's given you that guidance to evaluate and see what's working and not. It kind of forces you to answer those questions.
Right, you know, focusing on the subjects I want to focus on, you know, on top of a, I guess, Catholic classical umbrella, you know.
Yeah, I'm glad
like
that works so well. That's amazing. Amy or Marianne, do you guys have anything you do to kind of keep track of where you are and how you're doing and what needs to change?
So every few years, we actually do standardized tests. And it doesn't usually tell me anything I didn't already know. Like, I know this kid struggles in math or this kid struggles with punctuation or whatever, but it helps me pinpoint further what specific skills in science or in math that we should focus on. And then another thing I started doing a couple of years ago is I made a survey page that I give to my kids because they're old enough now that I can get their input. And it includes things like, I really love this. I absolutely hate this. Please don't make me do this thing again because and I left it blank. And this is what I really want to learn about next year. And so that's really fun to take that bottom part and apply it to, you know, a science or a history or a unit study that the kids would like to do in the upcoming year. And I can tailor that to like last year, one of my kids, like, I really want to do science experiments. So this year I made sure to pick a program that allowed him to do experiments and things like that. So those are two things that have helped us.
That's great. Would you be willing to share that survey in the group, or did you already?
I don't think I have, but I have to find it. It's on a different computer and
all right.
it might have gotten lost.
Oh, well, yeah, you can recreate it for us. No, I'm kidding. Come on, Amy. No.
There is a survey we get through Mother of Divine Grace. I don't think I can share it because it's copyright, but it's similar. Yeah. It's like, what was your favorite subject this year? Why? What was your least favorite subject? What do you want to be when you grow up? Or, you know, just like basic little questions. And so I've kept the surveys for a couple of years. And it is surprising. Like last year, my daughter, I was like, what was your favorite subject? And she's like, poetry. And I was like,
okay.
Okay.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, no.
You know, I was like, okay. Well, I mean, I was just surprised. I thought for sure she was going to say like history or something. She's like, poetry. Okay.
I think, you know, it's definitely key that no matter what program you're using, no matter what materials you're using or whatever direction or, you know, that your homeschool's going in, you know, you can always tailor it to your kids. You can always say, so what is it that you want and don't want? And sometimes they have to do the things they don't want, but you can maybe make it a little less, you know, terrible if you know that, you know, if you identify those things. And for me, some years it was really easy to tell, you know, what my kids liked and didn't like and how they were doing. But some years they surprised me. And I, like you said, didn't realize that they really hated or loved something. So that's a really great tool.
You know, because they whine and complain sometimes. But then...
but then that's the thing they enjoy.
And then they enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, so let me tell you some of the things that the survey that we came up with covers that maybe we haven't mentioned that I think is key. Because we talked in one of these calls that I think was the first one, that making decisions about homeschooling is important to consider your children. It's important to consider your educational goals and their social, emotional well-being and what they want and what they don't want and their likes and their dislikes. But probably the most important thing to consider is mom. And so the first section of the survey that we came up with makes you think about yourself as mom. And it helps you identify like your greatest joys and your greatest struggles, your virtues and faults, your relationship with God, your prayer life, how you are, sharing your faith with your children and experiencing that in the family. Because we felt like all of those things have to play into, they just do play into the way we mother, the way we teach. And if something's not right with mama, and if our health and our well-being and our faith life is not where it needs to be, it's that much more difficult to teach, to educate, to homeschool in the way that we're supposed to, in the way that, we're called to. So I think that section is a really good place to start, that if you can just assess, yourself. People tend to do that on January 1st, beginning of the year. I'm going to set personal goals or whatever, but I think to rethink about it periodically and at the end of the year, school year especially, or when you're ready to prepare for a new school year, whenever that is, I think is helpful. And so we found that really, really a blessing. And I should say that a lot of the questions in our particular survey sound repetitive or they're just phrased a little bit differently. But they do ask different things, even though some of the answers might end up being the same. So that's kind of a little, if you look it up and you're like, wait, they already asked that. It's just to get, the whole idea of it is to get you thinking, just like Stacy's consultant does, or, Amy, when your kids give feedback, and Leslie, when you're doing those monthly checks. Like, the whole idea is to get your brain focusing on these topics, because otherwise we don't have brain space unless we make it. And then the second section talks about your struggles with each child, and like listing them out. Struggles with your homeschool curriculum or philosophy or approach, like what's working, what's not working. All the materials, it goes into stuff like discipline and outside activities, because that affects your homeschooling too, is how much you're home, as we're all learning right now. But it helps you look at, what are the things not going well? What, my favorite question is probably, my worst homeschooling day this year was blank. And just really thinking through what made that so bad and what can I do to avoid those days. Then the third section is about successes. They're almost the same exact questions as the struggles section, but it flips it and says, what are my successes? What's the biggest success each child had? What's working well with my curriculum and materials? My lesson plans, my scheduling, discipline, what's going really well in those areas. So that you can take a minute and say, this was my best homeschool day this year because XYZ, and how can I keep doing that? Do more of the things that work and less of the things that don't work. So I really think that those are good mental exercises for us. We started with struggles and then put successes so that we could end on that positive and thinking like, okay, yes, there's a lot of stuff, ways to grow, but to look at the things that work is just as important as to look at the things that didn't work. And then the last section is on goal setting. And so then that takes all the information that you collected and asks you to set some priorities, set some goals. So this is kind of going back to the why we homeschool that we talked about on Saturday. That's the first question. Why do I homeschool? But then it talks about things like looking ahead. What are some big changes that might be happening in my family that I need to account for? What are my, best strengths that I can apply to my children? That's always been something that I laugh at, because I'm really, really good at doing certain things for other people, except my family. I'm a great planner and organizer, but like some things just fall short at home because guess it's like nobody else is holding me accountable. But
you know that they love you no matter how bad it is. So
exactly. They just are like, So really looking at those things, looking at mom's personality, what needs to change, how can I get better at certain things? Who was it last year at the IHM Homeschool Conference. Was it Mary Ellen Barrett was talking about she made one change and it was to smile?
Mm-hmm.
Was that her? Okay, Amy was there.
Yeah, I think it was her.
And she was like, I just realized that I don't have a very joyful disposition. I don't have, I'm not the cheerful mom. She's from New York. And so she decided that for the year, her goal was to just smile more. And it changed so much in her household because of that small goal. But it was about mom. It wasn't really about, the math and the science. And so those kinds of things really can make a significant difference. What else is on here that's good? It talks about just our faith and being an example to our children, looking at all of those successes and struggles that we named with each child and figuring out, okay, now what's that going to look like? This kid did really well with this, so should we do it again, or should we challenge them more, or how do we do that? But then it gets practical at the end and asks, like, what questions do you need answered? What materials do you need to collect to be able to have a successful year, or to be able to plan the successful year? Because I think we all kind of have our system of planning. Those of us on this call, because we've been doing this a while, you pick up the plans and you follow, you figure out how you're going to do everything, or maybe you create the plans and figure out how you're going to do everything. But before we do that step, we really need to evaluate, what is it I need to get? It's probably some pretty pens, but to collect all those things and be ready.
Erase markers.
Dry erase markers.
Yes.
All the time.
They walk away. They definitely walk away. So that's how the survey goes. Is it goes through personal spirituality, struggles, successes, and goal setting. So throughout this week in the Facebook group, I'm going to put kind of key questions from those sections, not all of them, because there are, I always forget this, 61 questions in the survey. But just kind of key things to kind of see if we can guide ourselves into this mental exercise. And it is more of a mental exercise than anything else. I usually take these questions and I journal throughout a week or two in the spring, and just kind of start jotting stuff down before I start thinking about planning for next year, so that I can have that. I've taken it to adoration before. Can't do that right now where I am, but just to kind of have that mental. And so my goal is that throughout this week, we'll kind of talk through some of these things, and maybe you guys can jump in on some of the ways that you guys have evaluated in your own ways, because, not just, like I said, this isn't the only way to do it. And then towards the end of the week, we'll kind of look back and figure out, great, have we thought through this, and what do we do now with that information? Because you're going to, we'll have a lot of information, but like I said, it's mostly about creating this space in our minds to just think about these things. And so maybe when we're washing dishes, or we're vacuuming, or we're rocking the baby, we can be thinking, what is it that's working? What is it that's not working? And create that opportunity. So what, let's see, what was my note here? Oh, so based on kind of that method and that explanation, are there things that I mentioned that you need to really figure out, or that you heard that you've never really considered before? I'm curious if anything jumped out at you from my really kind of quick summary there.
What question is it? On the goal settings, the one, was it 47? Oh gosh, what question was it? How can I use the unique gifts and talents God gave me in my homeschooling? I was thinking about that. So I saw a couple of years ago, how Homeschool Connections, and because you've done some of their the Refresh Conference and the Inspire Conference talks. I saw one with Jen McIntosh, and it was planning with the temperament God gave you.
Yes.
And it never occurred to me when reviewing my homeschool year or planning my homeschool year to really consider how my personality or my temperament, how it, like, I didn't consider how big of an impact it had in, our homeschool. It was always like, is it the curriculum? Is it the curriculum? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We really
stuck there.
you can go down that rabbit hole and never climb back out.
And spend
And
a lot of money trying to find the magic bullet.
yes. You can be stuck there forever for the rest of your life. And I saw that conference talk, and it just kind of, it always stuck with me. Like, so now she has it on her blog too, like planning with the temperament God gave you, and that sent me down a rabbit hole exploring temperaments. But I factor that in now with
Great.
what we're doing or how we plan, because it's just like you said, like if mama doesn't want to do it, or if mama doesn't like it, it doesn't matter how expensive the curriculum is or how everybody says that it's the best or whatever.
Right.
If it doesn't mesh with mama, then it ain't gonna get done.
Exactly. And it might be the perfect ideal thing to use with a kid even, but
Right.
if it's not working for mom, that has to be taken into consideration for sure.
Exactly. So I think that, when I saw that in your goal setting, in the goal setting section, I'm like, yep, right there.
We'll have to post Jen's stuff. I've read it before too. It's really good to help kind of phrase your mind as to how that works. What about the rest of you? Anything jump out?
I think. Oh. Go ahead. Go ahead, Lindsay. Leslie, sorry.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I had to double check the number. It was number 9. What am I doing to grow myself in my faith? And then there was another one a little later in the success area saying, 53, what questions do I need answered? And I think that is so good, because it really makes me think, we expect things of our kids, but are we bringing those same things to the table? And I think that's really important for me to keep in mind, because if my cup isn't full, if I'm not always thirsting for what is true, good, and beautiful, then how can I expect them to do the same? So I really liked that kind of self-reflection, just making sure, okay, that I'm showing them, I'm setting an example of modeling, and this look for knowledge and reflection and finding answers, even if I don't like them. That just really struck with me. I think it's easy for me to forget sometimes to do, and I'm getting caught up in the perfect copy work and poems to memorize, and I'm like, really, what's the why? And then am I showing them what it takes to be a good, strong, faithful Catholic? I think that's, really good for me.
That's great. Yeah, no, that is key. I appreciate that. There's, and that all of this ebbs and flows in different seasons. Some years we're great at it, and some years we're like, oh, I didn't pay attention to that aspect of my life, and I better get back to it. So, always has to be there to kind of check in. Marianne, what were you going to say?
Well, it was just, I didn't read that list. I guess I missed the boat on that. It's in the files section, you said, on the Facebook page?
I'll tag you. It wasn't required reading.
That's okay.
That's why I summarized it kind of quickly.
Okay. Yeah. But the part about, is the curriculum or the whatever good for mom? That strikes a chord, because, I am a person who I really don't think I could ever put together my own curriculum, but I won't say never. But often it doesn't fit either me, or it doesn't fit the child. Mm-hmm. I've tried different things over the years, so I think I need maybe some help with that. Taking a look at that.
Yeah, it's tricky, because sometimes there isn't something that fits both mom and child. Mm-hmm. It's like I said, the magic bullet isn't always out there. It's
or
tricky.
Season of life.
Yeah.
I remember, like, when I first started, I remember, I forget why, but there was a bunch of like Facebook groups, and they were like, I could never do Seton. I can't stand workbooks. La 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 la. And I just can't, it's just all busy work. And, and I kind of took that as like really great advice. But then, all these years later, you know, I've been doing this and having babies and moving all over the planet. And I'm like, I could see a season of life where I need a stack of, like, I'm not going to judge any mom who buys a stack of workbooks and says, you know what, this year we're just going to go through workbooks and just get what we can done. You know what I mean? I just think, like, you just and it's not because I think Seton is the best program for my children. It's just, you know, if the season of life demands that,
and I think I think it's key. We talked about how you know, that every family is so different, every kid is so different, and then the kids change and grow, and so the dynamics between them change, and then mom changes and status at home changes, and everything's always changing. But that makes every family so unique that there's no right answer. Right. There's not this is right and this is wrong in homeschooling. Right. Very rarely is there like, this is the worst thing ever, don't ever do this, because you know, I think Julie Bogart said something or posted something, I think it's from her book, that says, I'm not homeschooling my ideal, I'm homeschooling the child in front of me. And so I'm just like you, Stacey. Like, you know, my husband was deployed, we pulled out the workbooks because I needed a break. You know, there was a lot, you know, you have to just make those decisions based on what's working. And we always say the best curriculum is the one that gets done.
The one gets done, right. The one that gets done. So it's like, now you know, when moms ask, you know, like, what is the best? What is the best? It's like, look, you know, you can't, look, if you go with Seton, or if you go with Mother Divine Grace, or if you go with, you know, Catholic Heritage curricula, you know what I mean? It's like, is it the best for your family, for their needs at the moment? You know, you know, and it's just kind of like, you know, you're going to get a good quality education if you do any of them.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think we can get bogged down sometimes in, you know, just trying in making the decisions. But then when we step back and we, like you're saying, we listen to what the needs are right now in my family, and we get outside of the what's the best overall, you know, is the best, is what's the best for us. And I think that thinking about these types of questions and topics can lead us there, and we can go, oh, this is what we need. You know, we need something that's very structured, or we need something that's heavy on literature. We need something, you know, that's very hands-on, and we can kind of, or mom led, can always go that way. Amy, what about you? Did anything jump out at you that?
It's not an exact question, but just the idea of taking the kids individually. I grew up in a big family, and it's like everybody gets lumped together because that's what's easiest for me. I'm really good at paying attention to my temperament, not so good at paying attention to the kids' temperaments all the time. So I need to take that into account more. And this year I tried to do history together with a couple kids and try to do science together with a couple kids, and it totally fell apart by like way before Christmas time. So I have to keep that in mind, that they are still individuals, and key their programming and their curriculum toward them, but also keep in mind what's going to work for all of us together as a family, because I can't do 4 separate maths and 4 separate literatures and 4 separate histories and whatever, because that doesn't work very well for me.
It's totally a balancing act, because, you know, you can do what works best for mom, but if that's not what works best for the kids, it's like, okay, totally. So there's got to be give and take.
Totally backfired.
Yeah. There's got to be give and take there. There's got to be a figuring out, what can I live with and what will they do, and how can we maximize that? That's a good point. Because they're each individual kids, but we can't, I mean, we're already pulled in a million directions. Be reasonable in how much we specialize each kid. Approach. That's a good point. Like that.
You know what I just noticed, and I think I really like that, is that your questions don't focus on method and, you know, like methodology, you know, pedagogy, because I feel like that also sends moms into
Yes.
Like, I can't pick that curriculum. It's not Charlotte Mason. You know.
Yeah, I think there is a question on there about what do I like and is working with my current homeschooling philosophy, approach, curriculum, like to cover whatever it is you're doing. What do you like about it, and what do you not like about it, and what's working and what's not working? Because
I just think some moms get bogged down, or maybe I don't know what's the best way, like fenced in, or they restrict themselves because they're like, no, I read Charlotte Mason's book, and that's exactly what I want for my homeschool, and I want to do it exactly like that. And then for whatever reason, it's not like their kid is like miserable, and they're not making that connection. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because they're stuck in, really wanting a particular pedagogy to work.
Right.
And, I feel like, yeah.
Yeah. Again, it's all about figuring out what you will do, what will work, what's effectively teaching our kids, right? I mean,
yeah, you see, that's why I like your questions, because they're not like, okay, well, what's your methodology you prefer, and you know what I mean? Like, that's why I like your.
Well, yeah, there are quizzes for that. There are ways to figure out like what your preferences are and what you would lean towards. But I think you gave, a great example, Stacey, on how someone can take even a box curriculum like enrollment with Mother Vine Grace and still tailor it to meet the specific needs of your family and your kids at that time, and to take something and really, you're doing what's required of the curriculum and all that's, included, but you're just, making sure it works for your family. And I think we can do that with most curriculums. There's very few out there, I think, that we really would have to do it exactly day by day that they say.
Right. I mean,
perhaps some of the online programs, because you can't click to the next thing before.
Right. I think, like the distance ed ones. But I mean, even Seton is now like, you can pick from 4 different maths, like I think they're moving on the more customized track.
Yeah. Which means more decisions for mom.
Right.
But it's also why thinking these kinds of big thoughts and really evaluating these things is so important, because we have all these decisions to make. And if we don't have a guide, if we don't have kind of the key things in mind, and we've prayed about it and we've reflected on it in a calm spirit and not a panicky, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Then we can't make good decisions, and we won't make good decisions, and we could have a disaster. So before we close up here, what questions do you guys have, if you have any, about this process or any kind of process that would help you kind of think about these things? You're all brilliant.
Yeah, right.
I was wondering if I could make a plug for this book, Teaching from Rest by Sarah Mackenzie. It sounds like a lot of your questions really reflect that. And I try and reread that each year before I plan, because it's so inspiring, and I'm like, I can do this. This is great. And I find it helps really get me in just that right frame of mind, I think. And also The Brave Learn, I've been rereading that. That's a really good book. I'm so glad I have my own copy now, so I can mark it up and write all the things.
Those are excellent. Yeah, I do the exact same thing. I have a method now. I do this survey, and there's a couple books that I read, and then I pick up my planning, and then I go through the process, because there's those key things that we need to be reminded of over.
Yes.
And it needs to be like drilled into our brain that our kids are what we're doing this for. We're not doing it for the curriculum. We're not doing it for the, academics per se, even though that has to be part of it, and that's really our primary function. But I have to constantly drag myself back out of the check boxes and say, okay, how can I best lead this kid into adulthood? How can I best guide them and prepare them for whatever God throws at them and whatever their life is going to encompass? So that's awesome. I'm going to dump a couple links into the event on Facebook for you guys. And one of them is Stacey, you mentioned webinars and talks on homeschool connections. I did one on this survey called Prayerfully Reflecting on Last Year. I have to think it through. What's it called? And it kind of does a lot of what I said tonight, but maybe in a little more depth, and I include a lot of more kind of spiritual aspects to that and how you might go through and think through these things and why kind of I go a little bit more in depth. So I'll link that if it's something you'd be interested in checking out, or for some of the moms maybe that didn't get to participate in this conversation. And anything that you guys mentioned tonight, if I don't remember to link it up there, please, post it in there, and feel free to repost resources as we go through these weeks of planning, because Facebook's algorithms are messy and people don't see things. And so if there's a resource that you feel like would help a particular conversation, throw it up there. Or if you heard of a resource but aren't sure how to get it, ask again. We want to be a resource for each other. Talking to other Catholic homeschool moms has had the best impact on my homeschooling. It's given me the most peace, the most confidence, and it helped me to make the best decisions, because when I bounce ideas off of others and when I hear what works and doesn't work for other moms, it's definitely guided me in a really, really positive way, which is why I do all of these things in the group and the Zooms and stuff. So, closing comments, ladies, thoughts on?
Well, I would like to do the survey. It sounds like a little overwhelming. So how do you suggest going about it at this point?
Sure. I think, if you can get the file and print it out and then read through it without responding to anything.
Okay.
And then just go about your week and kind of think about some of those things. And then maybe stop periodically. There's 4 sections. So you could kind of do one section a day, like every other day or every day, and just kind of jot down thoughts or whatever you do best. Some people want, write a ton and they're journaling and they're writing, and some just want to jot down some keywords or and focus on those things. I think that's what I would do. If, never having done the survey before, is read through it all first. So you kind of know what's there, because and pray about it, because the Holy Spirit, as he does, will throw questions in your mind as you're doing other things, and he'll throw answers at you, and you once the ideas start to percolate, for me anyway, I start to notice things about my kids, or I'll hear things and see things that'll reinforce whatever's coming to mind. So I think that's what I would do. But I do think it's helpful to have some kind of written notes, whether on the page or in a journal, that you can refer to later when you're trying to make decisions, and do it that way.
Okay.
That helps.
Yep.
Great question. Love it. Well, all right, ladies. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I love that we have this international calling again. So special. It's just great. We have Canada, we have Australia, we have Texas, we have Massachusetts. I mean, we're all over. But we all love our kids, and we all seem to love homeschooling. And even if we didn't love it any particular year, we know it's the best thing for our families right now. So it's okay to not.
I was just telling a friend of mine, she's like COVID homeschooling now, and she's like, well, they're not back for the rest of the year. I might supplement the curriculum. And I'm like, you just let me know what you need.
That's awesome.
Talking curriculum is a hobby. Like, it's my favorite thing.
That's great. That's great. No, it's good. It's good that you guys are all, that we can be resources to one another and to others, and, help us on this journey, because we need all the help we can get. All right. Well, thank you again, ladies. And I will end us here, and we will talk again. Our next kind of thematic call on this journey is Friday at 1:30 to talk about this survey a little bit more. I thought some moms who couldn't come tonight would be able to get on. If you guys can come back, great. If not, we'll talk some of the same things, but we'll also get more in depth into what discoveries we made about ourselves in the survey, so we can maybe figure out what does that mean for goal setting for next year. But I am doing a call tomorrow night by special request on how to finish this year because, you know,
Yeah.
we could launch into planning for next year because that's a little more fun than getting the work done tonight.
A lot more fun.
A lot more fun. So that'll be tomorrow evening. And then we're just going to chit chat and be social on Wednesday. I just need to kind of decompress and maybe we'll do some silly games and chill out and bring a glass of wine and just chit chat about whatever's on our hearts and how to finish this, you know, COVID thing and do whatever we're doing and keep loving our kids. So that's the plan for this week. Really glad
Okay.
you guys came. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.